December 13, 1945. At exactly 9:34 a.m., the trapdoor opened beneath the feet of a 22-year-old woman who had become one of history's most notorious war criminals. Irma Grese, known as the Hyena of Auschwitz, faced the ultimate consequence for crimes so heinous that even hardened military prosecutors struggled to comprehend their scope. This is the story of how justice finally caught up with evil. Incarnate, a story that reveals the darkest capabilities of human nature and the unwavering pursuit of justice that followed the world's greatest conflict. Strong call to action. Before we dive deep into this dark chapter of history, I need you to do something important right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because it brings you the untold stories that shaped our world. Stories that schools often skip, but everyone needs to know. We're building a community of history seekers who refuse to let the past be forgotten. Share this video right now with someone who needs to understand why we must never forget these lessons. Are you ready to uncover the truth that changed international justice forever? Let's begin. The making of a monster. Irma Grese entered this world on October 7, 1923, in the small German village of Rechen, located in the Mecklenburg region. Born into a family of 5 children, nothing in her early years suggested the monster she would become. Her father, Alfred, worked as a dairy farmer and held strong anti-Nazi sentiments, a cruel irony that would later haunt the family name for generations to come. The Grese household represented the complex political landscape of 1930s Germany. While Alfred opposed Nazi ideology, the children found themselves increasingly exposed to propaganda through school and youth organizations. This ideological divide within families became commonplace, as Hitler's regime systematically targeted German youth for indoctrination. The transformation began in her teenage years, when Nazi propaganda infiltrated every aspect of German society. Educational curricula emphasized racial superiority theories, anti-Semitic literature became required reading, and teachers were replaced with Nazi party loyalists who prioritized ideology over traditional academic subjects. Young minds across Germany absorbed these poisonous ideas during their most formative years. At age 15, Grese made a decision that would seal her fate and the fate of thousands of innocent victims. She joined the League of German Girls, Bund Deutscher Mädel, the female wing of the Hitler Youth, where her mind became poisoned with racist ideology and dreams of serving the Reich. This organization systematically prepared young women for roles in Nazi society, emphasizing duty, obedience, and racial purity above all other values. The League of German Girls provided more than just ideological training. Members participated in physical conditioning, domestic skills training, and leadership development programs designed to create the next generation of Nazi supporters. Grese excelled in these activities, demonstrating the organizational skills and authoritarian mindset that would later serve her in concentration camps. In 1942, at just 18 years old, Grese volunteered for duty at Ravensbrück Concentration Camp. This wasn't conscription. This was a conscious choice made by a young woman who believed she was serving a greater cause. What she actually signed up for was participation in systematic genocide on an industrial scale, becoming complicit in crimes that would shock the world's conscience. The Ravensbrück training ground, Ravensbrück Concentration Camp, served as Grese's introduction to the Nazi extermination machine. Located approximately 50 miles north of Berlin, this facility primarily housed female prisoners from across Nazi-occupied Europe. Here she learned the twisted art of dehumanization, watching as prisoners were reduced to numbers, stripped of dignity, and subjected to unspeakable horrors. The camp's commandant, Fritz Suren, personally trained female guards in methods of psychological and physical torture. These training sessions weren't merely about maintaining order. They were designed to desensitize guards to human suffering and encourage active participation in the dehumanization process. New guards learned to view prisoners not as human beings, but as enemies of the state deserving of punishment. Grese excelled in this environment of cruelty. Her supervisors noted her exceptional dedication to duty and her ability to maintain discipline among prisoners through fear and violence. She quickly rose through the ranks, earning recognition for her ruthless efficiency in managing prisoner work. Details in maintaining order through terror tactics That went beyond standard camp procedures. The young guard developed a reputation for carrying a braided whip and wearing heavy boots that she used to kick prisoners into submission. Witnesses later testified that she seemed to derive genuine pleasure from inflicting pain, often selecting the weakest prisoners for the harshest treatment. This sadistic behavior distinguished her from guards who simply followed orders. Grese actively sought opportunities to cause suffering. During her time at Ravensbrück, Grese witnessed and participated in medical experiments conducted on prisoners without consent. These procedures, disguised as scientific research, served no legitimate medical purpose and were designed primarily to test the limits of human endurance. Her exposure to these atrocities further eroded any remaining moral boundaries. The camp's daily routine involved roll calls that lasted for hours, regardless of weather conditions, forced labor in armaments factories, and arbitrary punishments for minor. Grese developed personal relationships with certain prisoners only to betray them when it served her purposes or amused her to do so. This psychological manipulation proved even more devastating than physical violence, as it destroyed prisoners' ability to trust anyone in the camp environment. Such tactics demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of human psychology used for purely destructive purposes. Her interactions with fellow guards revealed the competitive nature of cruelty within the camp system. Guards who showed mercy faced criticism and potential transfer, while those who demonstrated exceptional brutality received recognition and advancement. This environment rewarded the worst aspects of human nature while punishing any remaining traces of compassion. The documentation of Grese's specific actions comes primarily from survivor testimony collected during war crimes investigations. These accounts, corroborated by multiple witnesses, paint a consistent picture of systematic cruelty that went far beyond the requirements of her position. Her behavior represented a conscious choice to maximize suffering whenever possible. Daily life under Grese's authority. The routine in Grese's section of Auschwitz began before dawn, with roll call that could last for hours. Prisoners stood in formation regardless of weather conditions, while guards counted and recounted, looking for any excuse to extend the ordeal. Grese used these sessions to identify prisoners who showed signs of weakness or defiance for later punishment. Work assignments under Grese's supervision included construction details, factory labor, and maintenance of camp facilities. She deliberately assigned the most dangerous and exhausting tasks to prisoners she wanted to eliminate, knowing that few would survive more than a few weeks under such conditions. This indirect method of murder allowed her to avoid direct responsibility while achieving the same deadly results. Food distribution provided another opportunity for cruelty. Grese controlled rations in her section, using starvation as a weapon against prisoners who displeased her. She would force prisoners to watch as food was thrown away rather than distributed, demonstrating her absolute power over life and death through the most basic human need. Medical care, such as it existed in the camp, fell under Grese's jurisdiction for her assigned barracks. She regularly denied medical attention to sick prisoners, instead sending them directly to gas chambers or leaving them to die from preventable illnesses. Her decisions in these matters were often arbitrary, based on personal whims rather than any systematic criteria. The arrival of new transports provided Grese with fresh opportunities to demonstrate her authority. She participated in the selection process, pointing left or right to determine who would go immediately to gas chambers and who would be allowed to live temporarily as slave laborers. Survivors recalled her apparent enjoyment of this process, treating life and death decisions as entertainment. Personal belongings confiscated from new arrivals passed through sorting facilities where prisoners worked under Grese's supervision. She encouraged guards to steal valuable items while punishing prisoners who were caught taking even the smallest necessities. This double standard exemplified the arbitrary nature of camp justice under her authority. Liberation and capture. As Allied forces closed in on Nazi Germany in early 1945, the SS began evacuating concentration camps and destroying evidence of their crimes. Grese participated in these death marches, continuing her reign of terror even as the Reich crumbled around her. Thousands of prisoners died during these forced evacuations, many at the hands of guards like Grese, who saw no reason to show mercy in defeat. The evacuation from Auschwitz began in January 1945 as Soviet forces approached the camp complex. Grese helped organize the forced march of approximately 60,000 prisoners westward into Germany, a journey that killed thousands through exposure, starvation, and outright murder. Those too weak to keep pace were shot and left by the roadside. During these final months, Grese's behavior became even more erratic and violent. Witnesses reported that she seemed to understand the war was lost, but continued her cruelty with increased intensity, as if trying to cause as much suffering as possible before the inevitable end. This escalation suggested that her actions were driven by personal sadism rather than ideological commitment. On April 15, 1945, British forces liberated Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, where Grese had been transferred in the final months of the war. What they discovered defied human comprehension. Over 10,000 unburied corpses scattered throughout the camp and approximately 60,000 prisoners in various stages of starvation and disease. British soldiers found Grese attempting to blend in with other camp personnel, hoping to escape detection. However, survivors immediately identified her, pointing out the woman who had terrorized them for years. Her capture photograph shows a defiant young woman who seemed incapable of understanding the magnitude of her crimes or the changed circumstances of her situation. The liberation of Bergen-Belsen provided the world with undeniable visual evidence of Nazi atrocities. Newsreel footage of bulldozers pushing mountains of corpses into mass graves shocked audiences across the globe and galvanized support for bringing war criminals to justice. These images became crucial evidence in subsequent trials. The trial that shocked the world, the Bergen-Belsen war crimes trial, began on September 17, 1945, in Lüneburg, Germany. This proceeding marked one of the first major war crimes trials following World War II, establishing legal precedents that would guide international justice for decades to come. The trial received worldwide media coverage, bringing the reality of Nazi crimes into homes across the globe. Grese faced charges of crimes against humanity, war crimes, and murder. The prosecution presented testimony from dozens of survivors who had witnessed her brutality firsthand. Their accounts painted a picture of systematic cruelty that went far beyond following orders. This was personal sadism elevated to an art form and practiced daily for years. During the trial, Grese maintained her innocence, claiming she was merely following orders and performing her duty as a German citizen. This defense, later known as the Nuremberg defense, became a common strategy among Nazi war criminals but found little sympathy among judges who had seen the evidence of systematic genocide. The prosecution methodically documented specific instances of Grese's crimes. Witness after witness testified about beatings, selections for gas chambers, and psychological torture that served no military or administrative purpose. The evidence revealed a pattern of behavior that could only be described as crimes against humanity. Defense attorneys argued that Grese was young and impressionable, caught up in circumstances beyond her control. They portrayed her as a victim of Nazi indoctrination who never fully understood the consequences of her actions. However, survivor testimony demonstrated that her cruelty exceeded even the harsh standards expected in concentration camps. The international legal team prosecuting the case included British, American, and other Allied representatives who worked to establish new standards for individual accountability in wartime. Their efforts created legal frameworks that continue to influence international criminal law today. Cross-examination of Grese revealed her continued adherence to Nazi ideology even after Germany's defeat. She showed no remorse for her actions and maintained that she had done nothing wrong, demonstrating the complete moral corruption that Nazi ideology had achieved in her case. Justice served on November 17, 1945. The military tribunal delivered its verdict. Irma Grese, along with 10 other defendants, received the death sentence. At 22 years old, she became the youngest woman ever executed for war crimes, a grim distinction that reflected the extraordinary nature of her offenses and the international community's commitment to justice. The trial established crucial legal precedents about individual responsibility for war crimes. The court rejected the defense of superior orders, establishing that following illegal commands does not absolve individuals of moral and legal responsibility for their actions. This principle became fundamental to international humanitarian law. The verdict sent shockwaves through Germany, where many citizens claimed ignorance of concentration camp atrocities. The detailed evidence presented during the trial made denial impossible and forced German society to confront the reality of crimes committed in their name. International observers praised the thoroughness and fairness of the proceedings, noting that defendants received competent legal representation and full due process rights, considerations never afforded to their victims. This commitment to legal standards elevated the trials above mere vengeance. Grese's execution took place at Hameln Prison on December 13, 1945. British authorities carried out the sentence by hanging, following standard military protocol for war criminals. Witnesses reported that she remained defiant to the end, showing no remorse for her actions or recognition of their moral implications. The execution of Irma Grese sent a clear message to the world that justice would pursue war criminals regardless of their age, gender, or circumstances. This principle became fundamental to international law and continues to guide war crimes tribunals today. Legacy and lessons for today. Story of Irma Grese serves as a chilling reminder that ordinary people can become instruments of extraordinary evil when ideology replaces moral judgment. Her transformation from a farmer's daughter to a war criminal illustrates how propaganda and systematic dehumanization can corrupt even the youngest minds. Understanding this history remains crucial for recognizing the warning signs of genocide and preventing future atrocities. Grese's crimes occurred not in some distant primitive society, but in one of the world's most advanced nations during the 20th century. This proximity in time and culture makes her story particularly relevant to contemporary discussions about human rights and international justice. The legal precedents established during her trial continue to influence international criminal law today. The International Criminal Court and various war crimes tribunals draw upon the principles established at Bergen-Belsen and Nuremberg when prosecuting crimes against humanity around the world. Educational institutions worldwide study the Holocaust and its perpetrators not to sensationalize evil, but to understand how societies can prevent such tragedies from recurring. The testimony of survivors like those who testified against Grese provides invaluable insights into the human capacity for both cruelty and resilience. Modern genocide prevention efforts rely heavily on lessons learned from cases like Grese's early warning systems, international intervention protocols, and human rights monitoring all trace their origins to the recognition that individual accountability is essential for preventing mass atrocities. Final call to action. History's darkest chapters teach us the most important lessons about human nature and the vigilance required to protect civilization itself. If this story opened your eyes to truths you never knew, then Army History is doing exactly what we set out to accomplish. Subscribe now and join our mission to preserve these crucial stories for future generations. Share this video with someone who needs to understand why we must never forget the past. Hit that like button if this content made you think differently about justice and responsibility. And remember, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. What will you do with the knowledge you've gained today? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next episode of Army History, where we continue uncovering the stories that shaped our world.